already up to NFL Week 5. How about that, Eric? Man, Week 5 now, and we're recording a little bit early this week. Appreciate Eric for helping me out. So just keep in mind if you're listening to this or watching this, we are recording this on Wednesday night. Normally, we'll always record on Thursday night. We sort of like to do that, Eric, because it'll give us just a little bit more information. Thursday's a good day to get some injury news for a lot of teams that are playing on Sunday. But what's nice about the last couple of years is that you and I also talk on Sunday as part of the Better Than Vegas Sunday morning show, 4th and Inches. So if anything changes over the next couple of days, Sunday morning, we'll know. We'll be able to give everyone up-to-the-date information there as far as injuries, if betting lines have moved at all, talk some fantasy, DFS stuff. But what is nice about recording a little early is that we get to talk about the Thursday game, and there's also another London game. So how you doing this week, buddy?
Doing good. Not going to lie. First Bulgarian wedding, still kind of recovering. But,
yeah,
that was definitely an adventure. And, still slowly recovering. Those Bulgarians, they can throw them back. So,
and that's what happens is that you got to come home and right back to the grind, right back in the middle of football season and college football season. And heck, we're fans of the NBA and college basketball. I'm watching the Laker preseason game right now as we record this in the background. So everything's coming together, and you and I will be together for a lot of content coming up over the next couple days. Friday at Better Than Vegas at BTV Bets, where we'll be talking some college football. All the BTV Bets content is presented by our friends at Betfred Sports. We're actually looking at the lines right now for Betfred Sportsbook. So if you're anywhere where you can sign up, make sure to do that. Then we'll also talk some Santa Anita prop contest. You and I are going to be doing a weekly live stream for that for the next month or so, 4 or 5 weeks. And then Sunday on the morning show, 4th and Inches. So you ready to talk a lot over the next few days, buddy?
I'm ready. Hopefully you can, Jim and I are going to be live streaming the old Kansas game, Kansas TCU this Saturday. Hopefully if your schedule allows, you can.
I think I should be able to pop on for at least part of that. And we are recording Thursday night. We may also be doing a Twitter Spaces on Thursday, or we're recording Wednesday night. We may be recording a Twitter Spaces on Thursday morning. So heck of a lot coming up right now.
A lot going on. Looking forward to it. I love talking sports. Just won the first football bet of the week with UCF. So let's get it going, my man.
Okay, let's talk about what's coming up this week, starting on Thursday night. Just a little bit overall, a couple notes on the NFL. So right now, the league average for EPA per dropback is the lowest it's been since 2017. And then before that, you have to go all the way back to 2005 to find a lower EPA average. So we've been hitting on this point each week. Defenses are playing a little bit more bend but don't break, forcing opposing offenses to take short, in the middle, really kind of short passing game and not allowing a bunch of big plays. That's changing the ways teams are going to have to play right now. So the offenses are going to have to adjust. The top 5 teams right now in offense and EPA: Chiefs, Lions, Dolphins, Browns, and Seahawks. Probably a couple teams on there you may not have thought before the season started. Eric, let's talk about the first game on the board Thursday night. We have the Colts and the Broncos here. So we did find out that Taylor's out for this one, right?
Yeah, Taylor's out, and
Naheem Hines will be a big.
But I mean, it kind of sounds crazy. Hines is obviously not as good as Rusher is as Taylor, but he does bring another element of the pass game.
Yep,
and a little bit more of a safety blanket. I locked this in at 3.5 as soon as it got up there. I look at it like this. Now, this is before the Taylor news came out. Who are the Denver Broncos to be laying this many points? People tend to forget. They forgot their most electric playmaker, Javonte Williams, for the season.
Man, that hurts. That hurts.
They lost their best defensive lineman, Gregory. Not going to be able to get to the passer. Going to be weak against the run. He's on injury reserve. He's going to miss his next 4 games going on IR. I think that's a big blow that people aren't talking about. Hackett is showing nothing. I mean, this is the worst red zone team. Russ is obviously struggling. Hackett is struggling because people need to realize he's never designed plays. So we're on week 4 now. People know your plays. He needs to be able to have adjustment. He's never done this before. I think this offense is just going to continue to struggle and struggle. You look at Frank Wright historically, he's 65% against the spread as a road dog. 4-0 as a road dog off of a loss, 67% overall following a loss. Denver defense, 20th DVOA against the run. I think this is going to be a get right spot for this Colts run game. I think they're going to lean on Hines. They're going to promote, I believe, Philip Lindsay up from the practice squad, get him going. Also, like I said, what people in the locker room already upset at Russ. I'm hearing a lot of stuff. There's already dissension. Frank Wright's on the hot seat. He's coaching for his job. I think this is just a great get right spot for the Colts here.
And it's been, when you go week to week with teams like this, you've been sort of watching the Colts the last few weeks, and a few weeks ago you were against the Colts, when they were in in one spot. Then you come back and you play them against the Chiefs. Then you come back last week and you play against them, against the Titans.
I think I've actually, thinking about it, I think I've had action in every single flipping Colts game.
From the beginning, you liked them against the Texans, and then you had the Jags. Then you came back and you played them in the good spot against the Chiefs, against them last week with the Titans. We were both on that spot.
I had them.
Yeah.
I had the Texans, I had the Jags, and I had them versus the Chiefs, then I had the Titans.
It's sort of like what happens when we handicap the NBA playoffs, or like a series, because football is different than, like the NBA regular season or a baseball regular season, where it's so long you can get into these stretches a little more. Football is a little bit more like bounce back week to week for the most part, like kind of counter what just happened. Okay, now they're undervalued, we bounce the other way. The points you were making about the running game too, they haven't been very good with Taylor. It's not going to drop off all that much right now. Taylor is tied for 3rd in the league with carries. He's averaged 2.1 yards per carry in week 4. He ranks just 20th in yards per carry among running backs with 40-plus carries on the year. He was dealing with the toe injury, now the ankle injury. He's out. So at 2.1 yards per carry with at least 20 rushes, that was the fewest ever in a game. And his previous career low was 3.4 yards per carry, which was the week before against the Chiefs. Now, it's not as if I think the Colts are good. There's a lot of things to look at with this team that aren't great. This could be an ugly game offensively. The Colts rank 10th in EPA per dropback in a clean pocket for Matt Ryan, second to last in EPA per dropback when pressured. You put a little pressure on him, he just crumbles. And they've turned the ball over on offense 9 times, second most in the league, -1.5 turnover margin per game. So think about that. Every game, it's like, oh yeah, you're already down a turnover and a half before the game even starts. That's where the Colts are setting themselves up right now. And that's ranked for 30th in the league. They've been outscored early, 65-23, and they average just 3.2 yards per play in the first quarter. They've only forced 3 turnovers, which should start to turn a little bit. NFL defenses, they'll accidentally get a couple more turnovers, and it might be against this Broncos offense that ranks 23rd in third down conversion percentage. They are 30th in first down per game, constantly behind the sticks. Last week, they had 7 plays with 15 yards or more to go for a first down. 7 times where they needed 15 yards to get a first down, and they failed to convert any of them. At one point, they had 3 straight 3-and-outs in the second half. They're dead last in red zone efficiency. No Williams. Gordon is now tied for the league in fumbles. They were only 3 for 11 on third down. Their defense, which is their strong point, we're seeing this with a team like Carolina too, Eric. You can only ask so much of a defense playing against other actual professional players, because if a defense has to go out there 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and you're not helping them at all, they get tired. They get worn down. They get beat up, and they just don't have that little extra oomph. They allowed the Raiders to score 5 drives of 10-plus plays. Boone, who's going to be getting a lot of run for them, he dropped an easy 4th down completion. It was their chance at an unlikely comeback, but it would have at least given them another set of downs. Gordon fumble in the first half totally changed the complexion of that game. I know you were on the Raiders there, and the Broncos are driving. They're tied. Broncos are at the 40 on the Raiders side on the Raiders 40, first down. And then all of a sudden they fumble, and it's a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Instead of the Broncos taking what could have been at least a 3-point lead, maybe a touchdown lead, they're down by 6. Yeah. And it just flips everything for them. And man, I mean, it was a better game for Wilson. He was 17 for 25, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 9.5 yards per attempt. Got the ball out of his hands a little bit quicker. But overall, he ranks behind Trubisky, Carson Wentz, and Joe Flacco with a 38% success rate play. So that's plays that produce a positive EPA in the passing game. What does that tell us? No consistency whatsoever. That's why they can't sustain any drives, because it's, one big play and then nothing else for the next 2 drives, and then one semi-big play. I mean, they're 30th in EPA per run. They're 25th in success rate. I agree with you. Like, I don't love either of these two teams, but if you're telling me that one of them is going to be over a field goal against the other, I would just take the team that's more than a field goal underdog here.
100%. I'm on the Colts. I'm still kind of player props really haven't come out. Like, books are getting a little sharper, like delaying player props.
Waiter.
I know I'll kind of be looking at some more Ali Cox player props, Naheem Hines player props, just kind of be sniffing those out. Maybe a little Latavius Murray player props, just something a little different. So, we'll see. We'll kind of see how everything kind of works its way out a little bit. So
let's move along to next game. This is in London. So we head to London for Giants Packers. Now, what do we know as of right now about Daniel Jones in this game?
We know nothing.
Nothing as of Wednesday night. We don't know exactly if he's going to play or not. So, that's
bringing in quarterbacks to work out. That's all I know.
If it's not him, it's Davis Webb, correct?
Davis Webb, or they brought back, what's his name? Jake Fromm.
And last week, Barkley was taking a lot of snaps. Sometimes they'll just, take direct snaps with him. So the Packers are an 8-point favorite in this game. Over-under in this one is 41 on the Packers side. They are now 3-1. Both of these teams are 3-1, so someone's going to be 4-1. Kind of, I honestly would say for both of them, a little uninspiring. For the Giants, for them, they don't have any expectations, so it's awesome for them to be 3-1. Anytime they can win a game, it's great for them. Stack wins. If they can get themselves into the playoffs in a year where 15 teams right now, Eric, are 2-2. Half the league is 2-2. If you can just stack wins, you're going to be in great shape. And Green Bay hasn't looked all that incredible. This is not the old Green Bay that scores 40 points, and blows you out. They had a really tale of 2 halves for Rodgers last week. Really bad pick 6 by Rodgers in the first half. He was just 4 of 11. Very good second half. 17 for 24, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a DPI, big pass on 3rd and 10. And then at one point, Dobbs dropped what would have been a go-ahead touchdown. It was a good game for Lazard, who you had pointed out early on. There were rumblings that this might be the guy. And after a little while, it's starting to look like he's the go-to guy. 6 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown. 5 that picked up first downs, and 3 gains of 20-plus yards. Really nice game for Jones on the ground. The one thing that's an interesting matchup about this game, Eric, the positive for the Giants, rushing. Barkley leads the NFL in rushing. The Giants are second in open field yards. They run the ball really well. They face the Packers this week, who have now given up more than 4.5 yards per rush in 3 of their 4 games. They gave up 126 yards rushing to Minnesota, 180 yards, 5.6 yards per rush to the Bears, and 33 carries, 167 yards, and 4.7 yards per rush to the Patriots last week. And what's crazy is that in 2 of those games, they were playing teams that are very predictable, just like this Giants team. Because the Bears, the Bears aren't going to throw the ball. They're just going to run. And the Patriots last week, they were playing without Mac Jones. They weren't going to be slinging the ball all over the place either. So they were playing against teams that are kind of the template of this Giants team, and they didn't really blow either of them out all that much. They kind of struggled with both of them, did the Packers. Now, there's only 3 teams that are allowing more rushing yards after contact than the Packers. They're bad tackling. The only team that they didn't give up a great rushing game against was Tampa. Tampa was down, and Tampa only ran 14 times in that game. So it wasn't like Tampa ran 25 or 30 times. They just sort of gave up running. That's sort of where the Giants get attack, right? They just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball.
I look at it like this. You mentioned some good stuff. Packers offensively are 5 DVOA running the ball, defensively defending the run. I'm so sorry. The Giants are 21st. I think the flip side, I think the Packers are going to be able to run the ball.
Sure.
They're only 23rd passing. You mentioned it. You said it yourself. Like, Rodgers threw the ball 27 times in the second half. I think this game kind of against the Packers, they won. I think it is the fact that it showed Rodgers he can throw the ball and have success. And if he's able to carry this over, that's going to make that offense a lot more explosive and a lot more dangersome. And at the end of the day, it's just so hard to really do anything because we don't know what's going on at the quarterback position.
And
mentioned the Packers.
They don't even have any and what's unfortunately, they don't even have any receivers when they did have a quarterback. They had 71 yards passing on Sunday. They have nobody there. Their staff is doing a really great job. They're making the best out of what they can right now. They are banged up with receivers. They're leaning on Barkley. They're getting a little creative with him. He's leading the NFL in rushing yards. He has the 4th highest target share among backs, which is great, right? Get him the ball too, out of the backfield. And he has 15 plays of 10 plus yards, 12 rushes, and 3 receptions, averaging 6 yards per rush on first down, on 53 first downs. 31 carries last week, broke 4 tackles, gained 94 yards. I think they both run the ball. I agree. I'm speaking positively about the Giants just in that they're overachieving a little bit. I'm not going to really play this game, especially this far out. Sunday morning, when we know a little bit more, maybe I'll dive in to a couple spots here and there. Lazard is someone who he's getting an improving target share. He is playing against the Giants team that's actually been pretty good, holding opponents to 57% passing completion percentage, which is 4th lowest in the NFL. One thing they don't do all that well, pass rush win rate. They have to get more sacks. They can't get pressure without calling blitz. They've called the 3rd most blitzes so far this year. So that's something that's going to be hard to sustain against better teams. I don't immediately have the strongest opinion in here. The Packers aren't the old Packers, and these totals feel low, but I would still lean under. And the only thing that concerns me is that leaning under, this is sort of a big number for a lowish total, but if Jones isn't playing and if we don't have any receivers and a quarterback, they do become very predictable. Even a bad team defending the run can defend the run when you have no other options. And when it's that predictable, even Chicago and the other teams that they faced have had a little wrinkle of a pass. So I'll probably stay away. Anything else that you think about this one?
I'd look at Barkley props. I'd look at Dylan props. I'd kind of be looking at those props. But like I said, it's just so hard to get involved when you really don't know what's going on in the quarterback room.
Rodgers became just the 5th player to throw for 500 touchdowns. Let's move along to Sunday. A little later on in the Sunday.
Oh, but real quick, don't you think it's weird Lambeau lost the home game?
Yeah, you're right. Of all places to take a game from and put in London, Lambeau.
Weird, but
I know. They have such a great home field advantage. Okay, let's go to Tampa, Atlanta. So this number has moved a little bit, right? Or about 9.
This is ballooned up a little bit. It opened
Okay.
up. It opened up at 7.5, 8. It's ballooned up to 8.5. Some books have it at 9. And it's kind of interesting. Like you look at these teams that are 3-0. I mentioned this thing about 3-0 ATS.
Now 4-0 for Atlanta, right?
Yeah. But when it goes up to 4-0, they have a positive ROI.
Because they might just be good, right? They might be good.
It was a negative. So at 3-0, it was a negative ROI. 4-0, it's a positive ROI. I don't know. I think people think like this is a bounce back spot. Obviously, Brady 7-2 ATS is a favorite with a 2-game losing streak. Spread seems big to me. Tampa laying over a TD with the offensive issues they have.
I agree. And
23rd.
So you were hitting that Brady number before. Not to interrupt. Let me just hit a couple more because it's sort of on that same point you were hitting. 14-0 straight up, coming off a 2-game losing streak. 12-2 ATS, coming off of a 2-game losing streak. And 11 of those games, they've won by double digits. They've averaged 31.6 points in the third game after a 2-game losing streak. So he's always bounced back. But I know what you're hitting. There's a lot of things to dive into with Tampa that don't look that fantastic. Keep talking. I'll hit on some of them. But you were, that was a number I wanted to mention because he's always been a bounce back. And I think that's probably what a lot of this number is built into also, that a lot of people think, okay, this is a big bounce back spot, get right spot for Brady.
Yep. And then, just kind of looking at this DVOA stuff, they are 23rd defending the tight end. Is this the Kyle Pitts game that we've all been waiting for?
Gosh, just 10 catches for 150 yards through 4 weeks. One good game.
Is this the game where he finally gets it going a little bit? But at the end of the day, I look at it like this, and I don't mean to get all like dramatic. And I'll be the first to admit I really don't trust the New York Post at all. But if the story is true, it's really hard to cap in the mental stuff.
Completely agree, man.
Of going through a divorce.
Well, I will say this. I don't know if that was true, but Jermaine Wiggins, who is on our Better Than Vegas shows, he was talking last week about this on the show before, and he said that this is happening and that they're going to be splitting up, and that this was something that was known. And it's a personal thing. It's not as if either one of them have come out and made like a statement about it yet. But if there is some additional stress issues going on with him, I just don't know if I want big numbers built into that right now. I'm not saying he can't come out here and win the game, right? If there's anyone who can focus and compartmentalize and come out here and just sort of have like an FU game, it's Tom Brady. We've seen him,
one of the most mentally tough players
in any sport ever.
In the game, but
we've seen that. But at what point
go through a divorce yet? We have no idea
what this could do to anyone.
What it's going to do to anyone. So I mean, I don't know. Like, with that being said, it's really hard to trust anything. I just don't want anything to do with this game, dude. Like, I
like, and I know it seems a little too easy to me to like Atlanta, but I still am going to continue to play them because I think that they still might be a little undervalued. So we have Brady 10-0 all time versus Atlanta, highest pass rating versus Atlanta of any team in his career. So all the stats say Brady good, but here's some negative Tampa stuff, right? Okay, last week they fumbled the opening kickoff. They gave Kansas City the ball right away and a touchdown 45 seconds into the game. Now, their defense still ranks top 5 in yards per play allowed in defensive EPOA. And when you get into their defense, it still is pretty good by a lot of the metrics. I think it's 4th in defensive DVOA. But week 1, they allowed 3.8 yards per play. Week 2, 4.7. Week 3, 5.2. Week 4, 5.4. They're starting to have some cracks now in that defense. They can't run the ball at all. They rank 32nd in EPA per run and 28th in rushing success rate percentage. On 51 early downs last week, on 51 early down plays, Brady dropped back 46 times, and he handed the ball off 5 times on 1st and 2nd down. They just said, screw it, we're not going to run. They did get their big 3 wide receivers back. They scored more points than they had so far this year, more passing yards. So maybe it was one of those games where they were never going to win, but they were able to sort of get a couple guys back, shake off some of the rust. Maybe they'll take a step forward and look a little bit better. They've given up 27 total points in the first quarter through 4 weeks, which is actually the 4th most in the league. But overall, they've only given up the 5th lowest total. So you just can't really keep getting behind like that. There are a lot of positive things about this Falcons team, and I got to give you credit every week when they play well, because you really thought they would be a lot better than most people, and they're the only undefeated team against the spread. They lead the NFL in yards per contact, in yards before contact per rush. Play action, they're ranked 8th EPA per play. Their defense is ranked 30th, though, in defensive EPA per play. We just talked about Pitt. He was only on the field. Last week, there were 7 routes out of the 20 that he didn't even run a route out of the pass plays. That was a little concerning. We want him on there for almost all of them. And Mariota didn't have a great game. He was 7 for 19, 139 yards with an interception. He only had 3 yards rushing. He currently ranks 26th out of 33 qualifying quarterbacks based on PFF passing grade, but they're still playing pretty well. Rookie running back, Algier, at 10 carries, 84 yards. He broke 2 tackles, caught a lone target for 20 yards. Him and Huntley combined for 9 rushes and 97 yards on outside rushes to the right on Sunday. They were just going right all the time. 2 games so far with 200-plus rushing yards. It's tied for the most in the NFL through 4 weeks. Offensive lineman Lindstrom was really good last week. He had what will be one of the highest offensive line grades of the year by any player. He allowed 1 pressure on 20 pass blocking snaps, helped the offensive line to push for over 200 yards rushing. They currently rank number 11 overall in DVOA. Like, this has not been a bad team. They're the number 9 ranked offense. They average 5.1 yards per rush. They average 7.4 yards per pass attempt. Those are both 6th in the NFL. And they were running the ball so well last week. At one point, they called 14 straight running plays before a dropped snap on 1st and goal forced Mariota to throw a ball away. And they even have a solid special teams. Kicker is 6 for 8 beyond 40 yards. The coverage unit is allowing just 4.5 yards per punt return. They have 144 yards of penalty differential. They've had only 3 penalties in the last 3 weeks. They do all of the things that a team that may not be as talented as everybody else and as deep needs to do to stay competitive, which is all about coaching, which you've come back to with Arthur Smith quite a bit, Eric. And he prepares this team. They haven't made a whole ton of mistakes. One thing where they struggle, they allow opponents to convert 44% of 3rd down chances, which is 24th. They got to be a little bit better on 3rd down overall. But, I mean, at over a touchdown, I have a hard time not wanting to go in the Falcons' direction. If you can get 7+, that was my buy-in number on them.
Yeah, I mean, like, it just seems too easy. Like you said.
I know, it does. It seems trappy. It seems a little trappy with how well they've been playing.
It's just one of those things. Like, sometimes you just got to know when to walk away and not do it. And I think this is the play. I mean, I have some other stuff circled that I really like this week. That I'm hoping I can get these numbers I want, and I'll attack there. But like I said, in my eyes, there's just no point to force. I'll just sit this one out.
Okay, let's move to Bears and the Vikings. So we've got the Vikings up to a 7-point favorite here against the Bears. Over under in this game 44. The Vikings, gosh, they're a 3-0 team that they're a 3-1 team.
Awful.
That is not very good. They could have lost.
DMs about my take about the Vikings being bad this year.
They're
reply
not.
is like, they beat the Packers, missing two tackles, and the Packers not. I don't even know what the Packers are doing there.
The Lions
crumbled. The Lions. They needed a bounce and a field goal when the Saints had their backup quarterback.
Yep.
Practice squad running backs and nobody in the receiving room. It's like this team has done absolutely nothing. This is even such a bluff. It's hilarious.
So last week, they got incredible field position and they didn't even take advantage of it. They got a drive starting on their own 45 after a punt. They threw an interception. They started on their own 44 after a punt. They could only get a field goal. They started on the Saints 20 after a fumble, and they kicked a field goal. They started on the Saints 44 after a fumble, kicked a field goal. They started on their own 45 after a long kickoff return, kicked a field goal. So they couldn't even score a touchdown with all of that incredible field position. That kept the Saints in the game with no Jameis, with no Kamara, with no Thomas. They can't pressure the quarterback. And that's something where they've been hurting a little bit. And the defense allows 75% of targeted passes to be caught, second highest in the NFL. So, sort of on the flip side, when teams don't pressure the Vikings, they'll do okay. But if you can put a little pressure on them and make Cousins have to go through progressions, they're in trouble. The Saints were dead last entering week 4 in quarterback pressure rate. So Cousins had a lot of time. Thielen and Jefferson combined for 18 catches, 220 yards. Thielen's kind of quietly gotten back into the fold, 96% snap share, 55 plus receiving yards per game. That's 26th among receivers right now with a 50% or higher snap share. Good game for Jefferson. He bounced back. He torched Lattimore, 10 of 12. He caught 10 of 12 targets, 147 yards, 5 first downs. Did have a couple drops, but he picked up 3 catches of 15 plus, 50 yards after the catch. The third most 100-plus yards receiving in a player's first 3 seasons behind only Moss and Beckham. They do have an injured safety, though, so they're going to have some secondary issues. This team got the ball twice in the last 2 minutes of the first half, Eric. One because of a fumble, and in those 2 times they got the ball in the red zone, they scored 6 points, leaving possible 8 points on the board at halftime. They've only converted 7 of 32 third down attempts of 6 yards or more. I don't believe in this team at all. But is this the spot to play the Bears, though? That's my only question.
I look at it like this. The one big spot that the Bears are solid running the ball, 11th DVOA. Their offensive line has actually been good. Running the ball. Vikings do struggle. They're 27th, DVOA running the ball. I think the Bears can have some success. This defense really isn't going to pressure Fields a lot and making some mistakes. Fields has been god-awful. We need to really look back and say, hey, is Fields even going to be the guy next year? This staff has a high pick. It's sitting at 7. If this gets over 7, I kind of feel I need to take the Bears. But kind of where it is right now, I just don't want to get involved.
I know. I'm waiting because this Minnesota team is a team I'm looking forward to playing against a little more throughout the year. But this may not be the spot. There are 3 teams this week that I really want to play against, but it just doesn't feel like the spot is right. Bears actually outgained the Giants through the air, and the Fields made a couple good throws. They had 170 yards passing, no interceptions. Offensive line allowed 14 pressures, but he did get sacked 6 times, lost a fumble that led to a Giants touchdown, pressured on 50% of the dropbacks. They settled for field goals on all 3 possessions inside the 20. They just don't even try to go for it. They allow a lot of yards rushing to the NFL's worst team against the run, having allowed 733. You mentioned it, though. It's not like Minnesota may be able to take advantage of that. Not the strongest opinion here for me either in this one. The Thielen, someone who I think he's kind of quietly getting back in the mix, so I wouldn't mind tossing him into some DFS here and there. I think
he's worth a play. I think Herbert's worth a play. This is a 1:00 game, and Cousins does cover in 1:00 games. That's the only thing.
We go Lions, Patriots. So this one's kind of funny to me because you normally would think, okay, the Lions are not even they're a field goal dog in New England, but this isn't your normal New England. This New England team has Zappy that's going to be starting for them too, but Detroit is still dealing with a lot of injuries. What do we know about some of the Detroit injuries right now? They were without Swift, Amon-Ra, Shark last week, like all of the receivers and their starting running back. They performed admirably on the offensive side. Defensively, though, they've just been an absolute sieve.
When you look at their roster and you just like look at what's going on, their two best players playing right now are rookies. Rodrigo, who they got in the 6th round,
and Hutchinson,
who they got in the 1st round. They just have no defensive depth, no defensive players.
Not really talent, honestly.
Adua isn't it? He's really strong.
Okudah had a good game against Jefferson, and then he got absolutely torched last week. He gave up 124 yards, 5 catches. He only broke up 1 of 6 targets that was sent his way.
And I'm looking at the lot. I got a notification the Lions brought in Sanu for a workout today. I'm reading the practice report. Amon-Ra St. Brown ankle didn't practice, may also miss versus the Patriots. DJ Shark ankle didn't practice, may may not play again. Josh Reynolds ankle didn't practice, but should be okay. Cespedes did not practice, highly unlikely to play.
The Lions lead the league in points per game, but they also lead the league in points allowed per game. They've given up 141. They've scored 140. That 281 total points is the most combined points in 34 games in NFL history. The Lions have lost 2 games this year in which they've scored 35 points. That's the most in a single season, and they've done it in 4 weeks. No team has ever lost more than 2 when they've scored 35. They're just so banged up right now. Goff, 11 touchdowns. It's tied for the league. They're dead last, though, in run defensive DVOA, and that's where the Patriots just should be able to eat them alive. They struggle in yards per rush, in red zone efficiency, and in 3rd down conversions. They're dead last in all of those. Williams is a really good backup, a really good number 2 running back. He had 19 carries for 108 yards, couple receptions. Hawk had that monster game, 8 receptions, 179 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think it was like a top 10 fantasy tight end scoring game all time. And on the Patriots side, we got the Patricia revenge game. Huh? Calling plays up there. I will say he was, I will never say he is good. He did better than he's been doing last week because he had a 3rd-string quarterback. It had to all be play action, and they were lucky that they were able to run the ball so play action worked. Because on play action, they averaged 10 yards per play on 9 play action calls. And they had a couple good spots. The rookie cornerback Jones looked really good, made a couple plays. And the backs both ran pretty well. They combined for 152 yards. They're going to look different. They used like 6 offensive linemen in a lot of their snaps because Smith got hurt. But they're not very good in rushing defensive DVOA either, 31st. These teams will both maybe try to attack each other on the ground.
I look at it like this. The only thing I'm interested in playing in this game, the under. This is the first game Detroit.
I think I agree.
You're seeing anywhere from 45.5 to 46.5. Maybe I'll get some steam over the next couple days to 47.5. I'll get involved then, but Detroit hasn't played on the ground. We don't know how this offense is going to look outside. I think this is the Reynolds game. It's kind of weird. Reynolds was on the field more than Williams, but yeah, he didn't outproduce him. I don't know. I think this is a good Reynolds spot because, like you said, the Patriots are 31st DVOA. Last week, the Packers were 32nd DVOA. Damian Harris and Stevenson rushing props did hit. So maybe look to play those guys as props if they are kind of where they were, like high 40s, low 50s. But yeah, just kind of sit back, look if the under ticks up a little bit, over under ticks up a little bit more, look to get involved. But this is another game I really don't want to rush to bet, because you got to look at it like this. Hoyer didn't practice. Mac Jones was limited. Mac Jones plays, this is going to balloon up to what? 4.5, 5?
I know, and they're trying, and this is like this is a Belichick thing too, where they're like, we don't even know what he's doing out there, but they're trying to just disguise you and sort of screw with their opposition, so that way you don't know really who's going to play. But yeah, it will definitely change a little bit. I mean, I will say I don't think he was great. He looked not bad for a third string quarterback that's a rookie that's never really probably taken a whole lot of snaps. Like, you could do a lot worse.
Last year at Western Carolina, I absolutely love the kid.
You could do a lot worse than he did last week coming out there.
I thought he looked good. I thought he handled the situation well.
Yep.
A little bit more mobile. I think his arm's a little bit more lively. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I'd say under, or just completely just sit back and chill out.
Let's move along to Texans Jags. So Jags got up 14-0 last week. Then they got a little dose of a very good football team in Philadelphia. They gave up 29 unanswered points, and Lawrence and the Jags, they were sort of the hot, buzzy team after a couple of good weeks. He turned the ball over 5 times in bad weather. According to ESPN Stats and Info, he's the first player this century to lose 4 fumbles in a game. 3 came on sacks, 1 on a bad snap. He got sacked 4 times, had an interception, completed just 11 of 23 passes, the lowest completion percentage over expected in his career, negative 21.1, lower percentage than expected. Wet and rainy, but he was terrible. Hurts was able to kind of weather the storm early and then make smart plays. Last year, the leader for lost fumbles in a season was 6. He had 4 in 1 week. They still do rank 6th in the league in scoring and 4th in scoring defense. No other team in the AFC South is top 12 in either category. So their metrics still look pretty good based on a couple of their victories. They play a Houston Texans team that's the lone winless team in the league. They do have that tie. And man, our guy Mills, he struggled a little bit this year. Last year, 67.1% completion rate. So far this year, down to 62. But the clean pocket, last year, he was great with time. 72.4% completion rate with a clean pocket. This year, 58.4%. That's a big dip. He's missing some throws. They have been able to get Pierce involved. He had almost 29 fantasy points, 6 receptions, 131 yards on 14 carries. But this team is really bad against the run. They are, I think, bottom 3 in rushing DVOA, or they're bottom 4. They're 29th. And they're giving up 5.1 yards per carry. They've allowed 688 total rushing yards. That's the second most in the league. They've allowed 34 first downs rushing. That's the third most in the NFL. And what ends up happening, because they're so bad against the run, they bite on play action. So they've allowed the 4th most passing yards in play action. So it sort of hurts them because they can't stop the run. Then they think people are going to continue to run on them, and then they start biting on play action. So they're really easy to attack right now. They're looking for their first win in here. What do you think about this game? This number, we're seeing Jacksonville -7, over under around 43.5.
I locked it in at 7.5. I failed anything over 7.5. I had to get it. It's kind of interesting when you're looking at the bet splits. The percentage of the bets on the Jacksonville Jaguars is 68%. So that means they have more than 50% bets, but there's more money on the Texans. So what does that mean? The bigger bettors are backing the Texans here. Betting is all about buying low, selling high. I love this Jaguars team. They look great. I have a future ticket on them to win the division. But
Texans did come back. Like, I said some negative things about them, but last week they did come back late. They don't give up. And you and I both like Mills a little bit. What I do think is that they have a little upside in that he can play better than he has so far.
I think this is kind of like a little trendy thing. You mentioned the Jaguars. They do like to pass the ball. That is the strength of the Texans. And I was looking at it. I mentioned this when we did our preseason stuff. Teams after playing the Eagles to start this year and the 2 years previous, 12 and 24 ATS.
They get a little beat up.
3% after they played the Eagles. I'm not saying the Texans can win here, but I got over 7. I got 7.5. I'd still invest here at 7. So I like the Texans here at anything over that. So yeah, I just think, I need to sell on my Jaguars. I wish I had like some analytical breakdown of why, but this is just kind of one of those gambling
things. It feels like another spot where it's like, oh no, all of a sudden, like the Jags are 2 and 3.
They're getting too much love in the market.
I know, and then it could be like, oh no, all of a sudden they're 2 and 3, right? And it's not like they're a week or two ago we were saying, is this one of the best teams in the AFC? And they're taking major strides, but I'm not sure if they're there yet. I do like Robinson for a bounce back game because last week that game sort of flipped. They were playing against a Philly team that's just very good overall, and now they're playing against this Texans team that's awful against the run. So Robinson could be a nice bounce back, DFS this week. Eric coming off of maybe, some people who may be seeing that bad week last week for him.
Yeah, I think this is a great spot. I mean, the Texans are giving up over 200 yards rushing on average. Eckler looked like a second coming of Eckler.
Yeah.
Week, so
that leads us right into our next game, the Chargers and the Browns. So we have the Chargers as a 2.5-point favorite on the road here, playing the Cleveland Browns. Over under in this one, 47.5. Eckler scored his first 3 touchdowns of the year last week. Through 4 weeks, the Chargers are ranked 4th in quarterback pressure rate on defense and 11th in pressure rate allowed on offense. So not bad in either. Herbert looked a lot more healthy last week. Offensive line helped keep him a lot cleaner, gave up only 1 sack and 2 hits. They just got to do a better job closing. Week 1, they led the Raiders 24-10. They let the Raiders get back in the game with a chance late to tie the game or to win the game, even though it didn't really feel that close. In week 2, they led the Chiefs by 10 midway through the third quarter. They lost by 3. Nearly spit out a 20-point lead last week before hanging on in the final minutes. They scored touchdowns on 3 of their first 4 drives, then a field goal on each of the next 2. Then they punted 3 straight times, then a fumble on a punt return. All of a sudden, the Texans score 17 unanswered, and they're right back in it. On the Browns side, we sort of knew they weren't going to be able to score a whole lot with this group. They only scored 20 points last week, and they got behind 10-0. It's sort of tough for them to come behind. They rank 1st in EPA per rush, 15th in EPA per pass. Chubb is averaging more carries than everyone else in the league but 20.3 per game. That's exactly what you and I wanted to see. And he leads the league with 6.5 missed tackles per game. But what hurt them was early in the game, there was a long drive. They went for it on 4th down, and they got nothing. Then again, they got 3 points out of a golden situation that began on Atlanta's 1. So 2 drives where they were deep in Atlanta territory, they ended up getting 3 points out of them. Now, they were without 3 of the 4 parts of their starting defensive line. And it does look like Garrett was practicing, and he should be back. Talk to us a little bit about this one, Chargers-Browns.
I got a 3. Found this weird thing where teams that are on the West Coast. Okay, this is just one of sometimes you find these weird trends, and I have this database I've showed you that I kind of play around with stuff. Teams that played the previous week in the Central Time Zone, and these are West Coast teams, and the following week they're on the road in the East as favorites, 44% against the spread. You know what I mean? 2 weeks in a row on the road, West Coast team, different time zone. Weird trend, kind of found it out. I look at this. The Chargers have some offensive line issues. Slater's out for the year. We really don't know if Lindsey, their center, is going to be playing. They've struggled protecting Herbert. And like you said, Myles Garrett is coming back. Last week against the Falcons, which everyone seems to be forgetting, they didn't have not one, not two, excuse me, but three starting defensive linemen. I think that kind of opened stuff up for the Falcons. They were able to do a little bit more stuff. And then you look at it, you mentioned my boy Chubb. Browns are 3 DVOA rushing the ball. Chargers are 18th, even though they made some adjustments to get some guys in there to stuff the middle. They're just not able to do it. I think the Browns cover the 3. I think the Browns straight up win. And my question to you is this. Are we at the point right now where 66-1 has value on the Browns?
Well, because if they can just sort of stay afloat long enough for Watson to come back and give them some upside.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
just put it in perspective. We're Broncos 33-1, Colts 55-1, Raiders 55-1.
I mean, the Browns very easily could be 4-0.
I mean,
very easily
at right now it's 66-1.
That's a big number for a team that has some upside built in a wide open league.
I think there's some utterly insane value right here that, you know, if they do get a what's his face back and oh my God,
Watson
back, I think there's value on.
Oh, that's a huge price.
I mean, even 28-1 to win the
AFC.
The AFC. I think, and if they win it this week, it's going to go down. I think there's some value that we're kind of need to start addressing for the Browns being at a low point after losing without 3 defensive linemen.
Well, and think
they get other playoffs at 9-8.
The other 2 teams in their division that probably on paper would be better than them, they haven't got off to these crazy good starts either. They're all 2-2.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I think there's some value right now on the Browns that we're kind of not talking about. And maybe if you guys want to put a future on them, I think this would be a time I'm looking at right now to make the playoffs. I mean, we talked about Minnesota. I think you could put a little Minnesota no at plus 300 just because we could see them losing some. Yeah, I think there's some value on taking a swing with a
big Browns price.
With a big Browns price.
Now, this next one, Eric, I'm not a fan of laying like a short number on the road. But the one thing I look at this game was like 5.5, 6 on the look ahead, is the difference between Tua, who's been playing well this year. I will give him that. He's played well. But is the difference between Tua and Teddy B like a 2.5 to 3 points?
No.
I don't know. I heard, I got to give it was on the Pick 6 podcast. The guy said, you mean the difference between Tua and Teddy B is 2.5 points? 2.5 points, which is da-dunch. I thought that was pretty funny. But Teddy B is a covering machine, Eric. He's 67% against the spread since 2000. That's the number 1 cover percentage among quarterbacks. He's 42-21 ATS. On the road, 24-6 against the spread on the road. This number is down to 3. I just on principle, I don't love the laying the number like this. Divisional game on the road, but I think the Jets are getting a little buzz off a couple games that they probably shouldn't have won. They should be maybe 0-4. Cool for them that they've won a couple, but I think the Dolphins might have a little too much for them. Can't Teddy B do what Tua did and just get the ball in Hill and Waddle's hands?
And plus, he has a better arm. He can throw it downfield more, which opens up.
He looked better down the field. He was 14 for 23 for 193 yards.
I think that, it's a scheme. It's a gimmick. It's a system type offense. And what Teddy does, I think, fits the system better than Tua. And I've said this a couple of times, and it's hard for people to understand. The majority of the people that play football are right-handed. When you have a left-handed quarterback, everything is completely different.
Yep. The way the ball comes out, the way you set up the plays, your routes that you run.
the left tackle becomes the right tackle. The right, you know what I mean? Blind
strong side is different.
So I think we need to remember that. I like the fact he looked down Tyreek Hill a lot more. This Jets team, 29th DVOA defending the pass. How are they going to be able to stop Waddle and Hill? Speed and, what are they, like 30th DVOA in total defense? This Jets team is awful defensively. And it's kind of funny because wasn't Robert, what's his name? Robert Salah. Wasn't he supposed to be this great? They're 25th DVOA in defense, 29th pass, 14 against the run. Wasn't he supposed to be this great defensive guru? He's 36% ATS at home. Dude,
51% conversion rate on 3rd down defense. That ranks 31 out of 32 teams.
I think you hit it right in the head. This team is getting overvalued. The lines people are kind of over. Oh, Tua's not playing.
The Jets have won a couple games. Yeah. They beat the Steelers in a game where they made a quarterback change midway through. He threw 3 interceptions. One of them was bounced off a receiver's hands that game. And then the Browns game where the Browns spit that game out in the last 2 minutes that the Jets had no business winning. Like if they're 0-4, I don't think this is. And once this got down to 3, that was absolutely the point where I bought in on here. At 3 or less, I'm in.
To me, it's you take the Dolphins, you don't bet it. There's no. Yeah. But I don't lay points in the road.
No, I know. But see, that's the thing where the rules that we have are only made to be broken or slightly altered in a case like this where we have a massive quarterback change to where the Dolphins actually feel like value based on like how you and I think of maybe Tua versus Teddy, or even the numbers that I said, like Teddy's covering numbers. I don't think this should have gone down almost 3 points because of the switch from Tua to Teddy. And that in this particular situation, I'm okay with laying the points on the road because it's only the field goal. If it was over 3.5, even if it went down 3 points, I wouldn't lay it at 3.5. Even if it moved from like 6.5 to 3.5, I would wait till it got to 3. And then that would be one where it would be a field goal and under. I'm fine with it because, Wilson was bad in the first 3 quarters. He got better in the fourth quarter. He went 10 of 12. He had a long drive. But we're starting to find out that I don't know how good this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is, honestly.
They're nothing without Watt.
No, and without Watt, without Watt, they really struggle. They look like a completely different defense without him. I like Miami in this spot at 3 and under. Just a couple notes on the Jets side. You do have Hall, who ran for 17 times, caught 2 passes on 6 targets. He takes the passing down and role. He has 26 targets this year, which is second most for any running back. And it was the first week where he had the majority of the early downs. He has the clear majority of goal line work, and he got 100% of the goal line snaps this week. Rushing production was better than Carter. Gray is out better than Carter as a rusher. But, Wilson is a little feistier and gives them better upside than Flacco, but I just think this number is a little short here. I'm leaning Dolphins in this one.
I do think this is a game, though, that you can kind of attack in DFS.
Yes. I'm so on both sides of them. Maybe Carter there. Corey Davis has a good connection with Wilson. Last year, he was someone a lot, and he went.
I do believe someone mentioned that in our preview show about him having like a 21% target share.
Yep. And then what was nice to see that Conklin, who had a good couple games with Flacco, he had a good game last week with Wilson. So what that'll show you is that like if a particular player does pretty well with 2 different quarterbacks, they're probably going to be involved more so than not. So I wouldn't, mind throwing him into some DFS flyers as well. As we anything else in this one, buddy?
Nope.
Let's move to Pittsburgh, Buffalo. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us as we dive through the lines with our friends up at Betfred Sports. Give them a follow at Betfred Sports on Twitter, Betfred Sportsbook, anywhere you can sign up. Some of the best wagering opportunities, incredible promotions, and these are the lines we're looking at. Big spread here. Bills are a 14-point favorite in this one, over under 46.5. Remember that at the beginning of last year, week 1, the Steelers did beat Buffalo, but you have Pickett, who entered the game last week, he helped build a 10-point fourth quarter lead. He made some mistakes, but he was better than Trubisky, no doubt.
Well, I look at it like this. This is the way I look at it. Well, first of all, Tomlin, like, there's this video circling around, how Tomlin handled Ryan Clark. And that video just shows you why these guys love Tomlin and do all this stuff for him. Basically, Clark got a concussion, wanted to play. They met with Tomlin. 5 minutes into the meeting, Tomlin looked at Clark and said, if you were my son, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. Because he was thinking about Clark.
Yeah.
And that just kind of shows you what a guy Tomlin is. The offense was struggling, and it kind of needed to be, like, you know what I mean? It
needed something, just a little pick me up.
And that's what he did. But it was against the freaking Jets.
Dude. I know.
You know what I mean? The Jets are 32 DVOA. Everyone's getting a hard on, excuse my language, for Kenny Pickett. And I thought he looked awful. I'll be honest.
He was, he made some bad throws. Yeah. He didn't look good, but that's how bad Trubisky has been. He was much more lively than Trubisky. I think he led 5 drives, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions on the 5 drives that they led. It was just totally, feast or famine. He threw the 3 interceptions. 2 of them were on deflections. 1 was a Hail Mary. 2 were his fault, but they did get more points, more yards per game with him than with Mitch. Pickens seemed to be the real beneficiary. He got 5 targets on 14 passes, 31% target share. He had an average depth of target, 20 yards downfield. And overall, he had 6 receptions for 102 yards. 71 of those came with Pickett. They connected on a couple nice back shoulder throws. But man, why wouldn't you just start the kid when they had think about their schedule. It was kind of soft. They played the Bengals. They played the Patriots. They played the Jets in a couple of their first weeks. Now he has to have his first career start on the road against the Super Bowl favorite in Buffalo, and then has to play Tampa, the Dolphins, and the Eagles, all top 13 teams in DVOA in the next few weeks.
He's going to get absolutely lit up. And the thing is this, and we've talked about it before, you have a bad defense in the Jets, 32 DVOA last week against the pass, going against someone they haven't prepped for. Now you have all these teams prepping for.
They've got a little film on him now.
And he's going to get lit up. I mean, it's going to be a brutal thing watching Kenny Pickett.
I'm not laying 14 here, but
if this dips, if there's like some crazy group that comes in, or there's these big bettors that put out, and it gets down to like a 13, call me absolutely crazy, but I would contemplate taking the Bills. I kind of feels like in the survivors I'm in, with you, it's Bills or nothing. So
they've won 5 straight home games by at least 2 touchdowns. They turned the ball over twice and went 3 and out twice with only a field goal early on in the game. They had an 11% chance of winning at that point in the game when they were down 20-3. But real key was late in the game. There were 2, at the end of the half and then late. Down 20-3 with 90 seconds to go in the half. They went 76 yards. They put themselves back in the game, down 10. Then late in the game, they go 12 plays, 77 yards, game-winning drive that takes 4 minutes off the clock. They never let Lamar get the ball back. In the final 3 quarters of the game, Allen was 16 for 27, 182 yards. He rushed for 62 yards and another touchdown in those final 3 quarters. He had 70 yards rushing overall on 11 carries. Before this game, he was 0-7 in his career when trailing by 17 or more points. But man, he's a stud. 3rd in EPA per dropback behind Mahomes and Tua. Bills rank 2nd in total points allowed and in yards per play allowed. They lead the NFL in first downs per game and in third down percentage. They're 3rd in the league in yards per game. Their defense leads the NFL in interception rate and in sacks per pass attempt. They rank 2nd in yards per game. I mean, just like everything. Offensive line didn't play that well, though. 7 pressures at a pressure percentage of 17%. But Poyer, it's just one or two guys that make the difference in those games, Eric. Against Miami, they had none of their secondary. Poyer plays, and he ends the final 2 Ravens drives with interceptions. If he's playing against Miami, maybe it's a different game.
Yeah.
Just one player like that. Third down and defense. That's a weak point for them. They rank 19th. And it's probably because they're still a little banged up in the secondary. So in, third and 4, 3rd and 5 situations, you can still attack them in one-on-ones maybe if you're playing against, when they're playing against like a Hill or maybe a more talented offensive player. They don't have quite as much of their top talent on the defensive side. But yeah, man, since Watt got hurt the last 3 weeks, Pitt has given up an average of 23 points per game. So it doesn't sound like a lot, right? But 23 points per game when scoring is down this year, and the teams they played, New England, Cleveland, and the Jets. We're not talking about these like high power scoring offenses. They've only had 3 total sacks since Watt went down. I can't lean Steelers here. I would love to. This is normally the game you and I would want to play a huge dog like this. I can't get there. Let's get to Saints Seahawks, as we have Seattle on the road, and the Saints are a 5.5 point favorite in here. Jameis, Kamara, Thomas all missed last week. Dalton played. It wasn't horrible. And the offensive line was okay. They kept him free from pressure. 1 sack, 1 hit, 2 hurries across 30 pass blocking snaps. Through 4 games, though, they've been outscored 45-17 in the first half, has New Orleans. They are dead last in special teams. They're just 2 of 5 on field goals between 30 and 50 yards. And they're only averaging 58.2 yards per kickoff, which is 30th in the NFL. They're also dead last in penalty yards, which means they lead the NFL in penalty yards. They have 6 defensive holding penalties. They continue to give out free first downs. Olave looks like a stud, though. He caught another touchdown last week. We have on the Seattle side, man, Geno, through 4 weeks, number 1 in completion percentage above expectation. He's behind Mahomes, Tua, Josh Allen, and Lamar in EPA per play. In yardage, touchdown, interception, and sack rate, all above average. He's 3rd in Football Outsiders defensive yards above replacement DYAR. He's 2nd in DVOA for quarterbacks. He's number 2 in PFF passing grade. Last week, 320 yards, 10.7 yards per attempt, 2 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays. Eric, I can't remember seeing something quite like this. Like, we've seen some backups come in and have good little stretches. This guy was a 2nd-round pick back in 2013. Started all 16 games as a rookie. They went 8-8. Next year, he goes 3-10 as a starter. Then he's benched. In the next 7 years, he made 5 total starts between the Jets, Giants, Chargers, Seahawks. And now he's ranking towards the top of all of the offensive categories in the league through 4 weeks. And what's funny, Seattle is way above average in passing rate, which they never wanted to do with Russ. Like, they never played this way.
They wanted to do with Russ, but
he kind of, it wasn't a good combo, right? Like,
what we're seeing now is they brought in the new OC from the Rams last year. This was the vision for the offense, but Russ refused to do it like that. So I know,
because he still refuses sort of to do it like that with Denver. As we were saying, his consistency from down to down, he wants to take the big shots more.
Yep. I look at it like this. It's really, really hard to know what to do when you don't know who's underneath center. So I don't know. It's important. We got to monitor, Penny hurt again, could, shoulder injury, didn't practice. Shoulder injuries are big for running backs because they do hold it against their shoulder, can get swiped at. Homer's on the IR. This could be the Kenneth Walker game where he takes control of that backfield. We need to watch that. Next thing is maybe this is the time where, they get the Saints get it going, because it's not like the Seahawks are that good defensively.
31st in points in yards allowed. They just gave up 520 yards to a Lions offense that was missing their three best playmakers on offense. Their top two wide receivers and Swift. And when you look at the defense, it's not like it's one thing for them. They, as many positive things as I will say about their offense, you can equally say is bad about their defense. They are getting beat against the run, struggling in transition because they're changing to the 3-4. They're missing tackles. They're not getting a consistent pass rush from anyone besides Nwosu. They're losing one-on-one matchups. They're committing too many penalties on the back end. They're playing 3 young quarters and a backup safety because of injury issues. Like, they're just playing bad on defense.
And someone needs to get that audio, because I said the only bet to make was Geno Smith over 7.5 yards rushing.
I think you called that one.
He had like 40. Yeah, like I don't like this game. Like I said, like I don't know who's playing quarterback. With that being said, I can't bet this game. You don't know what's going on with Kamara. If Kamara comes in here, this opens up a whole aspect to the offense we haven't even seen yet, where you can like line up Kamara and Olave, Kamara, and if Michael Thomas plays on the same side. So it's really hard to do anything when you don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? So this is just, I don't want anything to do with this game.
Yeah, I'm definitely not laying this number with the Saints. Like, I'm very interested in the Seattle side. I want to get a little bit more information about it because they've honestly just looked like a better football team. This number just feels a little high. Like, I would be interested at this number at above 4 on the Seattle side. I am curious who is playing for New Orleans. Honestly, the quarterback doesn't really concern me as much as are we going to have like Kamara and Thomas and how many of their weapons, right? Are they like depth wise? Do they have some of them back? Because Dalton is fine. Like, he'll get the ball out quickly. He just won't take as many deep shots and he'll get it to some of them. But I mean, the Seattle team, they scored a touchdown or attempted a field goal on every one of their possessions until the end of the game last week when they took a knee. That had to be fun for you as a Lions fan watching that. Every possession until they took a knee, they scored either a touchdown or attempted a field goal. Nope. You mentioned Penny. His injury is key because he ranks 3rd in the NFL in yards per carry with 5.96. It's 17 carries, 151 yards rushing, and he also had 2 touchdowns. Also caught a 6-yard pass. He's been used much more on 3rd down this year. He played 5 snaps on 3rd and 3 or longer, which was a big deal for him just for as fantasy purposes. So we'll see, with his health. Like you said, if he's not around, does the tide shift? Their offensive line was good. They gave up just 3 pressures overall, only 1 quarterback hit. They were given the Offensive Line of the Week award by Pro Football Focus after helping rush for 235 yards, 7.1 yards per carry. They kept the Lions without a sack. They had a touchdown on runs of 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 16. So they've been really good offensively. They jumped all the way up in 1 week from number 12 to number 2 in offensive DVOA. Monster game. They rank 4th in yards per attempt, 7.8, and they've allowed just 6 sacks, which is tied for the 5th lowest in the league. That's a positive for them. Metcalf, in that funny moment, had to get carted off to go to the bathroom. He said, man, I didn't want to run. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it over there. So it was a long run. So he had to take a nice ride on the cart over there.
You know what?
Nature calls.
I've never related to someone more in my life in that moment right there.
Right? We've all been there. We have all been there.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just one of those things, like I don't know everything, so I can't do everything with this game. So I'm really limited on what I can do
We'll know more on Sunday. Come and hang out with us on Sunday morning for 4th and Inches at BTV Bets, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Let's talk Titans and Commanders. A couple more games to finish up NFL Week 5. So the Titans are a 2.5-point favorite here on the road, playing the Commanders. Over under in this one, 42.5. You have a Titans team that won back-to-back games and a Titans team that very easily could have 3 victories here. Offensive line is still struggling. Derrick Henry ranks 28th among 29 backs with 40-plus carries in yards before first contact per attempt. Now, he did get 100 yards for the first time this year on 20 carries, but 79 of those yards came after contact, 4 explosive run plays, 5 rushing first downs, and a rushing touchdown. And Tannehill has been under pressure on 39% of dropbacks, which is the 3rd highest rate in the league. So this O-line, that's a weakness for them, no doubt. Burks will be out. Maybe you get a little bit more Robert Woods, who's kind of quietly become more a part of the offense the last couple weeks. He might be a DFS throw for me in a couple spots. The defensive front, they did a pretty good job against Jonathan Taylor. They only allowed 42 yards on 20 carries. They did for the second week in a row, though, Eric. The Titans got out big, and then they started to coast late. They got complacent. They got lucky because they barely hung on in a game where they got a strip sack, which led to a 6-yard loss and a punt when the Colts were in field goal range. Then a Jonathan Taylor fumble on 4th and short. Then the Colts also missed a 51-yard field goal attempt, which went wide right. The defense made a couple big plays, a couple sacks that caused the fumble, and one of them that set up a touchdown score. And then late in the game, that other sack on 3rd down that I mentioned that stopped the potentially game-trying drive and forced a long field goal shot. But they have given up 5 plays of 40 yards or more through the air. That's on the Titans side. Washington has just looked brutal the last few weeks, but they continue to feel like one of these games they'll play well because they're at a low value point right now. I probably
though those uniforms were tight.
The Washington ones,
that all black, that there were phenomenal uniforms against the against the Cowboys. The all black ones.
I think I would need 3 to 3.5 to get on the Washington side here. I definitely wouldn't lay it with Tennessee. I played Tennessee the last couple of weeks. They've done me well. Wentz, he's taken more sacks than any quarterback, 17. He's tied for 2nd in the league with interceptions. He ranks 27th in EPA per dropback, tied for 27th in PFF passing grade. They've given up 110 yards on sacks. That's the 2nd highest in the league, more than a football field. Their yards per completion is 4th from the bottom. Offense has no rhythm. They have to try to go for like these short, inefficient passes, and they just don't work. He was all over the place. He threw for 170 yards, 2 interceptions, and they're pressured on 40.9% of their dropbacks last week. That was compared to 31.7 weeks 1 through 3. They've also given up 12 plays of 30 yards or more. 10 of those have been pass plays just because of blown coverage. I need 3 or 3.5 to get enticed on Washington. At this number, I'm probably just staying away.
All right, so I have a couple angles here, okay? Week 1, Christian Kirk, 17.7 fantasy points. Week 2, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 39.4 fantasy points. Week 3, Devontae Smith, 30.9 fantasy points. Week 4, CeeDee Lamb, 21.7 fantasy points. What do all 4 of these players have in common? They're all guarded by Benjamin St-Juste. He is giving up 27.4 fantasy points per game against opposing wide receivers. Burke obviously isn't playing with the turf toe. I'm going to have to do a little bit of a deep dive to see exactly who the Titans are going to be playing in the slot. It usually is Robert Woods, but does Woods move outside? You know what I mean? Does Woods move outside? So I'm going to have to do a little bit more work on that. Maybe this will be a Westbrook Nike game. Maybe it'll open up for him. Mm-hmm. So I think there's value on the Titans wide receivers. I like the Commanders here. It's at 2.5. I have no problem playing it there. Obviously, I'm waiting and I'm praying for the 3. I say it every week. There's certain coaches I like playing as a dog, certain coaches like fading as a favorite. Vrabel, 15-21-1 ATS as a favorite, 42% as a that's 42% as a road favorite. He's 40%. You mentioned the Titans struggled defensively against the pass. They're 26 DVOA. Wentz is averaging 230 yards. I think this is a game where Wentz can get it going throughout the air. For his dismal as the Commanders' defense has been. They're actually pretty good against the run per Football Outsiders, which Gino and I use for DVOA. They're 6. So I think they're going to be able to contain Derrick
Yep.
Henry. Vrabel off a 2-game winning streak, 36% ATS, all the trends and the little stuff, and there is some schematic advantages that the Commanders have. So yeah, I like the Commanders here. Like I said, this isn't a game I'm rushing to go bet.
But if it was at this number, you would be okay with betting it come Sunday.
I'd be totally fine betting it. But I'm just sitting back, smoking a Cuban, waiting for that 3, and then if it gets here, great. If it doesn't, I'll just play the 2.5 I'm seeing at most shops.
Let's move to the 49ers versus the Panthers. Now, one thing I will do is, and that's what we have to do as gamblers, right? Like, there are people that we particularly like or don't like, but we have to say what the facts are. I liked and do like overall. I'm a fan of Baker Mayfield, what I've seen from his play. I'm probably a little higher on him than most people are overall. I thought he has had a couple of years where he was very good. One year where he did a great job, another year where he was really banged up, and then at the end of his rookie year, he was solid. This year, he has been so bad. I mean, there's just nothing at all positive to say about Baker. You can say bad things about Matt Rule and other parts of the Panthers, and that maybe he's not, they're not prepared. They don't run great offensive scheme, all that stuff. I won't disagree with you there. There's just some bad stuff here about Baker. So they finished last among offenses on Sunday in EPA per play. They were more than 30% worse than the second lowest. On deep balls, he was 0 for 5 with an interception. On short stuff, he was 5 for 10 for 18 yards on passes that were at or behind the line of scrimmage. His 2 carries were stuffed, one of them on third. One, he fumbled a snap for a loss of 3. And he did this against a bad defense. Arizona is not a good defense. He was pressured on only 18.4% of his dropbacks. So he completed 15 of 27 passes for a touchdown and 2 interceptions when facing 4 or fewer pass rushers. He's second to last in EPA per dropback among quarterbacks with 80 or more dropbacks. The only one who's behind him, Trubisky, he's benched. He's not even playing quarterback anymore. Last week, he had 9 batted passes, 9 passes that got batted down. I mean, he got lucky because in the second quarter, he threw a bad interception on a wide open route to DJ Moore. Moore was wide open. He threw behind him and it bounced into Arizona's hands, but Arizona couldn't take advantage of it. So the Panthers were actually able to come back and kick a field goal after. What hurt them, Eric, the chin injury, it just crushed their defense. And they're another one of those defenses that remind me a lot of the Broncos, that this is a good defense. They had to spend 22 minutes on the field in the second half because the offense can't do anything. At some point, you just get tired. So last week, McCaffrey had 17 touches. He had 9 receptions, which was awesome to see. But through the first 3 weeks, he had 50 carries and 29 of them were between the tackles. Why are you using McCaffrey like that? He was second in the league with rushes that were marked inside or right inside, only behind Jonathan Taylor. And he's actually averaged a good number, 5.4 yards per rush between the tackles, but he has one big 49-yard run gain that sort of balloons that average. And even if you take that away and he's averaging like 3.9, do you want him to go between the tackles 10 or 11 times a game just to get 4 yards? Is that worth it? Like, why not find a better way to use this guy? And they finally threw the ball to him a little bit more. But for example, Chubb and Henry, they have 23 and 21. Like, you think of them kind of like McCaffrey as sort of number 1 running backs in fantasy. They have 23 and 21 runs to the outside. McCaffrey has 5. 5. Why wouldn't you be trying to get this guy outside?
I mean, we talked about it, though. Yeah.
Rule is just awful. And McAdoo.
It's McAdoo. It's all McAdoo.
Because Rule used to at least be better with how they got McCaffrey the ball until this year.
Yeah. I look at this game like this. You have to play the Panthers. I mean, you just have to do it.
Yeah. You got to hold your nose and do it. We've got beat by them a few times this year, but damn, again, like last week, I'm saying it wasn't like Arizona was beating them up early.
I had Arizona last week.
No, and I know you did. You were on the right side of two good games that were spots, and the two teams that you caught the right side of, I wanted to play against them this week because the teams they like, both the Raiders and the Cardinals, because the teams they played, I think it was more about them. I think it was more about Denver and Carolina's ineptitude. The only problem is it doesn't look like it's necessarily the greatest spot to play against those teams this week because they're, maybe with Denver, like we said, but I don't know about with Arizona because they're sort of in a different spot. But it's hard not to go back to Carolina in here. How about this one? Matt Rule, I'm sure you saw this one. In games where the opposing team scores 17 or more points, he is 1-26, and he has lost 24 in a row.
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, my thing is this. Line was 4.5, during the start of Monday Night Football. As of right now, it's sitting at 7.5. One book has it at +7 at -120.
At 7, I'm in on the Panthers.
Which I don't want to do. I'm fine playing the 6. I'm playing the 6.5. I'm just waiting right now. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't cover as a favorite. 14, 18, and 1 ATS. That's 44%. Kyle Shanahan as a favorite. 16, 26, and 1 ATS. That's 38%. Now, this is the thing that I found interesting. Teams coming off a Monday Night Football game in the Pacific time zone the following week. So this means this is like no matter what time zone or what time they play. On a short week, 44% ATS. Ooh. So that definitely kind of like changes the thing. And one of the things that honestly, like Schefter tweeted it out, I think at like 6 a.m. this morning. Or yesterday morning, excuse me. Trent Williams' backup is out for a while. He like sprained his MCL.
So now they're down to a third stringer.
Down to a third string left tackle on a non-mobile quarterback's blind
with
side.
An offensive line that already had some struggles and some concerns coming in.
That's kind of something.
They're too overvalued because
being discussed enough. I'm gonna full transparency.
If it's same thing. If it's 6, you're fine with it.
Yeah,
but you're gonna wait.
Sunday morning, I'm still saying I'm taking the Panthers at 6.
But you'll wait.
I got time on my side. I have my alert set up. If this gets to 7, I'll be betting the 7. But right now, there's no hurry. I'm just gonna sit back. I'm just gonna wait for my spot. Try to get the 7.
So the positives on the Panther side that I had mentioned were McCaffrey had the most receptions to any Panther player this year with 9, and Moore was targeted 11 times, and he had a season high in air yards. Those two guys you got to get the ball to.
And DJ Moore is already demanding a trade, too.
I know. You got to get the ball to those two. And the defense gives up more than 10 points a game in the final quarter to rank towards the bottom of the league. It's because they're getting tired. They were on the field for more than 38 minutes against Arizona. The 49ers, they come off a game where they've got a weird thing against the Rams, too. Like, they always play well against the Rams. They lost to the Rams last year in the playoffs, but before that, they always play well against the Rams. Always. And we'll talk about the Rams in a minute. They've got a lot of problems. So I think you feel like, oh, you beat the Rams and they're the Super Bowl champs. It's just right now, I don't know how much a win over the Rams really says about you, because the Rams have a lot of issues themselves. But positives for the 49ers. Defense is very good. They rank first in yards per play allowed and defensive EPA per play. Bosa, 3 sacks, 14 total pressures, near 30% pass rush win rate last week. Also had a run stop. And Debo's awesome. 6 catches from 7 targets, 115 yards, and a touchdown. 3 missed tackles, 3 explosive plays for 106 total yards after the catch. Now, the defense is good, but one of those games was against a bad Bears team. Another one of those games, like I said, they're playing a Rams team. Their offense isn't the same as you would think for the Rams. We're both going to be playing Baker again this week. We're both going to be on Baker's side one more time. Let's move to Cowboys, Rams. Just talking a little bit about them, Eric. And, they've got a lot of problems. I'm a Rams fan, but right now they need a lot of things to fix because they rank 34 they rank 34. There's only 31. They rank 32. They rank 31 out of 32 teams in quarterback pressure rate. And that's with Donald. The offense, 28th in EPA per play, 21st in EPA per dropback. It's really predictable because it's all about Kupp, right? It, like for them, you look at their issues and okay, they don't really have a number 2 out there right now because Robinson has been very disappointing and Jefferson hasn't been giving them much, and they don't have Odell out there who was a nice role in the number 2 role. So it's all about Kupp. They can't run the ball consistently, and the offensive line is having issues because they're missing their veteran Whitworth. They allowed 30 total pressures and a 53.6% pressure rate. Noteboom allowed 10 pressures and 3 sacks. And then they're also dealing with injuries in the secondary. They're without multiple cornerbacks. They rank 25th in DVOA against the pass. One of the concerns with this Rams team and the way they've built this team, they have top-of-the-line talent, but not a lot of depth. So when they deal with injuries, if they have a lot of them, they're going to be in some trouble because they're not being, they can't fill in with the same type of talent that other teams can fill in. They're sort of hard capped and maxed by the amount of money that they've spent. So it's not surprising to me when you look at this Rams team that, they're struggling a little bit and they're towards the bottom of a lot of advanced metrics.
Their offensive line sucks. I mean, I like doing victory laps when I'm right, and I said you guys would miss Whitworth. I said no.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody thought they wouldn't miss him.
Somebody replied to my tweet saying, "Tell me you don't know football without telling me you don't know football." And I said, when I tweeted out the Rams are going to struggle this year because of their offensive line. Like I was attacked and told I knew.
Now let me say this: just
nothing.
You can take your bow right now, but I won't. They're struggling right now. I don't think Noteboom is as bad as he played in that game. And for the same side, they did just play one of the best defenses in the league. So
their offensive line has been an issue now when we're 4 deep.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be. It's the only problem is it was going to take a while for their offensive line to gel. So early, I'm not surprised at all that early they're going to have these struggles. The key is, can they improve or are they just going to be bad? I'm not shocked that they've been bad right now. I think they still have a chance to improve moving forward. I don't know if they're just bad, I don't know if they'll just end up being bad.
Noboom's natural position is guard. He's playing out of position. We got to remember that. And he's never been a starter. You guys, Allen did practice limited today, so he could be coming back, which would help the interior. You guys haven't been able to run the ball. Dallas's weakness is stopping the run. Maybe this is the game where we see you guys are able to get the running game going.
It's still a little high number though, right?
Stafford's holding the ball too long. He's feeling pressure. He's looking down Kupp. And they did it. I saw this thing on Twitter where Robinson's just not getting separation, and that's
not at all. No, he just looks old.
He's just struggling, and you guys got the championship. It's great. I wish my Lions would get one, but this is going to be, I feel, a long year.
The one thing I will say about you is that you definitely are very ready at a lot of times to just write them completely off. Now, I don't think they're going to be able to win a Super Bowl again this year, which is really all that matters for a team that won the Super Bowl last year. But like in this league, that's so wide open and everybody's 2-2 and there's so much parity.
Oh yeah, there can be so much stuff that happens.
I think they'll still be able to be they're a playoff team. And I mean, look in their division, I don't know that San Francisco is going to necessarily go and win double-digit games, and I don't know if Seattle or Arizona is either.
The Rams did. The goal isn't just making the playoffs. You know what I mean?
No, not at all. Not at all.
To make the Super Bowl, make the NFC Championship game.
Although sort of For them, though, I think they're kind of in like a Tampa situation now, too, where, for them, all they do care about is getting into the playoffs.
And I mean, like, let's be honest,
healthy.
What they need the most is they need Odell Beckham Jr. to walk through that room.
100%. They need to get another playmaker in. Mm-hmm. They need to have a good string of games in the middle of the season where they can sort of figure out the offensive line, if it's moving a piece around or two, but just getting some consistency there. And I still think they're a 9 or 10 win team, maybe maybe 1 or 2 extra wins. But right now, this group right here, no, they can't win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Can they get Odell back? Can they, at full strength, have some of the talent to match up against some of the better teams? I still think they could, but they're a long way from that right now. They're a long way from that right now.
Insanely long way. Rush 4.0 ATS, due for some regression. Number sitting at 5, and it's kind of weird because, like, if Dak, hypothetically, let's say Dak plays, what does this number do? Hypothetically, let's say Rush is announced as the starter. Does this change at all? Like, we've seen this number has moved the most out of any number. It was 4.5. It ballooned up to 5.5, back to 4.5. When we're recording now, 5.5. It is absolutely all over the place with how good Parsons and the defensive front is getting to the quarterback. That is a little worrisome. But again, it's one of these games, like, I don't know what's going on at the quarterback position. So you really can't do anything. Maybe you look at Henderson props, maybe Akers props, because the weakness of the the Cowboys defense is the run. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. DVOA against the run, they are 25th. Maybe you can get the running game going.
Yeah.
But I think part of the issue is Stafford's feeling
the line, right?
Yeah, he's feeling pressure before, and teams are covering Cooper Kupp, and he's the only guy he's looking at.
They're stacking the ball. They're like, you right there. You cover Kupp and put a little pressure on Stafford, and they become predictable right now. Cowboys, as you mentioned, Rush 4.0 as a starter, thrown for at least 200 yards in each of his starts, has yet to throw an interception. And they've scored between 20 and 25 points in each of those games. Lamb is now up to 12th in fantasy scoring this year. He's averaging 86 yards per game over the last 3 weeks with Rush. And their offensive line is, that looked like it was going to be a weakness. Smith has continued to play pretty well at left tackle for Dallas, and Peters was actually rotating in at guard. Eric, he wasn't bad. He was allowing less pressure than McGovern, the old man. The defense ranks second in the NFL in sack yards with 93. They rank fourth in pressure rate. And Gallup looked pretty good. He had a touchdown and 2 pass interference penalties for 65 yards. They do allow 5 yards per carry, though. As you were pointing out, they've given up 20 runs of 10 yards or more in 4 games, including 2 runs of at least 33 yards in the past 2 games. Maybe McVay can get a little creative with getting Kupp ball out of the backfield, getting, Robinson on a reverse, just something. Use Kupp as like a decoy in the run game a little bit too. So come on, McVay, this is you right here. Get a little bit creative. And this is a game where you got to step up here and get a victory. I wouldn't want to lay the number with the Rams at right now with what we've seen at 5.5. No way, no how. Couple more games to discuss. Let's get to Eagles and Cardinals. So we have Philly as a 5-point favorite on the road playing Arizona. Over under in this game 49. Philly, lone undefeated team. They were down 14-0, and they scored 29 straight. Sanders rushed for a career high 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. Reddick on the defensive side was awesome. 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, recovered 2 fumbles. They lead the NFL in takeaway differential at +8. They lead the NFL with 8.79 passing yards per play. So think about that. Best takeaway differential, best passing yards per play, and they allow the fewest passing yards per play, 4.75. They lead the league in sacks. That's about as well-rounded as you'll find. They do have some injury issues in the secondary right now, but they're well-balanced. First in sacks, first in takeaways, third in yards allowed, 10th in points allowed on defense. They've played with the lead more than any team in the NFL. They're top 5 in rushing and passing. Funny stat for them, They have a plus 71 point differential in the second quarter. They've scored like all their points in the second quarter. And then they're minus 27 in the other 3 quarters. But just bizarre the way that their games have sort of played out. They do play this Cardinals team who scored 23 points in the second half. And they're dead last in point differential through the first 3 quarters of games. They're 30th overall in total points scored. Cardinals have 4 sacks. That's the fewest in the league. And the sacks per pass attempt rate is a league low. The Cardinals have lost 7 straight home games, and they've given up 30 points or more 4 times in those 7 games.
Look, you play the spot in gambling, right? Who did the Eagles have on deck on Sunday Night Football? The Dallas Cowboys. Going out west to play the lonely Arizona Cardinals. Jalen Hurts, 2-5 ATS is a road favorite. My boy Cliff. He covers, dude. 29-2 ATS as a dog, 69%. Murray as the starting quarterback, 18-9-2. I'm not saying they're going to win. This number's at 5.5. I'm fine playing the 5 or the 5.5. You know, obviously, I'm hoping that this does get up to 6, maybe even 7. But I think there's value here on the Cardinals. You know, the Eagles do like to run. Arizona, shockingly, they're 11th DVOA defending the run. I'm not saying they could stop, but they'll be able to limit them. I think this is just kind of one of those spots where you have to like hold your nose and play Arizona.
See, I think my only worry is I think you caught them on their spot last week because I was the other way. I don't know if they're consistent enough to put another good game again. Like they may be down by 30 points early in this game with the way they've been coming out in games to start. I'm not sure if Philly right now, they kind of remind me of a team that doesn't really know what they are yet, right? Like I don't know if Philly thinks they're that good because what have they really done? Right? Like this isn't like a proven playoff team or anything. They're still led by a young coach and a young quarterback and a bunch of new pieces. I think they're still kind of in prove it mode right now. That's sort of why I like their spot last week. I wasn't going to play them against the Jags, but everybody was kind of going against the Jags. I agree with you in the look ahead for Philly with the Cowboys next week. That's the game that they care a little more about, but I don't know if I can get on Arizona here because I just watched that game, every play of that game last week for Arizona, and that was so much more to me about Carolina being so bad than anything I could really take positively for Arizona. But man, yeah, I would need 7, I think, to get entertained. But Cliffy Kingsbury and Eric, they're going to be on the same side this weekend.
I hate it. I absolutely hate it, but you know, that's my dirty spot.
Final 2. Let's go Sunday Night Football, Cincinnati Bengals, Baltimore Ravens. Ravens a 3-point favorite at home. Bengals 3-point dog on the road. Over under in this game 48.5. Couple things on the Ravens side. I mean, they could let's start with the Bengals. They could easily be 4-0. They lost on game-winning kicks in week 1 and week 2 after tons of mistakes and slow starts. Defense actually playing pretty well. 6th in EPA per play, 1st in touchdowns allowed per drive, and 2nd in points allowed per drive. But they are 26th in sacks per drop back, according to ESPN Stats and Info, tied for 22nd in total sacks. Burrow, over the last few weeks, though, an EPA per dropback, 2nd, 5th on pressure dropbacks in the last 2 weeks. 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He's only been sacked 3 total times in weeks 3 and 4 after being sacked 13 times in weeks 1 and 2. He threw for 11 first downs on Thursday, 7 of them on throws to the left. So how about this? We know that he can go left. So he is an ambi turner. That's a major positive for all the Zoolander fans out there. They were 8 for 15 on 3rd down compared to Miami going 2 for 10. And Higgins looked good. 7 catches, 9 targets, 125 yards and a touchdown, 4 first downs, 3 explosive receptions, forced 2 missed tackles, 12 total pressures in pass protection. So they were giving up pressure, but they've schemed a little bit better. So it's just not drop back and let Burrow be a sitting duck in the pocket. They've done a better job of getting him out of there. Quick throws, quick releases, like just different patterns that they're running. And each week he's had less pressure dropbacks because they're running the ball more, or he's scrambling a little bit, or they're dumping it off to Mixon. Overall, they still rank just 18th in EPA on the offensive side, and it's mainly because they can't run the ball. They're 31st in EPA per rush and dead last in rushing percentage success rate, but they do keep trying. They play a Baltimore Ravens team that is 14-1 straight up in their last 15 home primetime games. Talk to us a little bit about this Sunday Night Football game, Eric.
So I look at it like this. I gave this one out on Tuesday night when I did my stream. I took the Ravens minus the 3. The Bengals give up a lot of production to the tight end. So I really believe Mark Andrews is in line for a good game. He's the center of the Ravens passing attack. Plus, I hate to use the term must win. Ravens are 2-2 because they could easily be 4-0. There's actually people in Baltimore calling for Harbaugh to be fired. How crazy is that? He's 42% ATS in these Sunday night primetime games. I'm looking for the Ravens to bounce back. I know the Bengals, they've won 2 in a row, but have you really been that impressed? You know what I mean?
But I mean, both of these teams could be 4-0 and probably should be 4-0. Both of them too. I haven't been all that impressed offensively with the Bengals. I've been a little bit more impressed defensively with them. They had a soft schedule though. They should have been able to get out to a good start to their season. The Ravens, they've just got a couple weird things going on, but I mean, I think they're the better team here so far. They didn't score a point in the second half. They scored on their first 4 possessions. This is the second game in a 4-week span when they blew a 3-score lead at home. Mm-hmm. They're the first team to blow 17-point leads plus in back-to-back home games since 2011, since the Vikings. They've actually lost 5 straight games at home, which is bizarre, dating back to last year. Now, they spit this game out too, right? But there was one call late in the game where there was a roughing the passer call on Josh Allen. That was not roughing the passer call. It was a terrible call. They gave Buffalo a free 15. Tied 20-20. The Ravens go on a 14-play, 93-yard drive. It takes 9 minutes and 20 seconds. They get to the Buffalo 2-yard line. It's 4th and goal. They go for it. Now, I love to go for it. In that situation, what's a little bit different is that it's 20-20 with 4 minutes to go. The 3 there gives you the lead versus going for it. You may not get the ball back, and they didn't. Buffalo never gave them the ball back. How about this?
My issue with that is they ran 4 straight passing plays in that sequence. There was no RPOs. You know what I mean? There was no Lamar
creativity.
I agree with you, with what you're saying. My big issue with that was the 4 plays.
Is that okay, so that's a separate thing, right? Should he or shouldn't he have kicked it? One thing. If you're not going to kick it, what kind of plays are you going to run? Those weren't the type of plays. If you make the decision, we're going for it, get a little more creative. This was the first team since play-by-play data was tracked in 1991 to be tied or leading, have the ball inside the opponent's 5-yard line, turn the ball over, and lose the game without retaining possession again. Yeah. That is nuts. I mean, the Bills...
They covered.
They did. The Bills did it perfectly, though. They played it perfectly when they got the ball, and they just ran it completely out. Now, watching them, do you wonder if maybe Lamar's getting a little bit tired in some of these games? Because he's had some big rushing games, and he's flipped a little bit in the second half. So in the second half, he had just 36 yards passing and 2 interceptions. So far this year, he's completed 71.7% of his passes for 8.3 yards per attempt and just 1 interception in the first half. And then in the second half, 58% of his passes have been completed, 6.9 yards per attempt, 3 interceptions. I wonder if maybe get a little tired, too, when you're running like that late in the game for him. And maybe it'll help with Dobbins being around now.
Which he easily could.
Right.
I just want to touch on this. You mentioned Mixon in the offensive line. Burrow's holding the ball on way too long. I think that's part of the issue that's going on. They changed their run scheme blocking to And Mixon's really having a hard time finding the holes and understanding where he's supposed to be. So I think like that's another thing. Mixon is having a down year. He averages the most opportunities per game, 29 and change, almost 30. But he's just not reading where the holes are. He's really having a hard time adjusting this new blocking scheme. And for the Ravens, they were embarrassed last year, both times by the Bengals. I think this is the revenge spot. Like I said, I took 3. I'm such a numbers guy. I wouldn't play it over the 3. If I had to play it, I would even play it over the 3.
The defense for the Ravens has been really good to start. In the first quarter, they've allowed 0 touchdown passes and they have 3 interceptions. How about in the fourth quarter, 68% completion rate, 5 touchdowns allowed and 2 interceptions. 42 of 62 passing for 471 yards allowed. Opposing quarterbacks have posted an NFL best 88.6 QBR against the Ravens in the fourth quarter. Last year, they lost 6 straight games, 5 losses by 3 or 4 fewer points. 2 of them, Harbaugh attempted to go for go-ahead 2-point conversions instead of game-tying extra points, and both times they lost those games. Only 2 other teams in NFL history have blown 3 leads of 17-plus points at home in an entire season. The Baltimore Ravens have done it twice in the first 4 weeks. There have only been 10 teams ever that have blown multiple 17-point leads at home in 1 year. And Baltimore's done it in 4 weeks, in 2 games at home, a couple games at home. But I don't love the Bengals in this spot. I don't know if I would get in at the Ravens, but at 3, I would lean Baltimore in here because like, both of these teams should be 4-0, but the Ravens should be a better 4-0. They've just, some weird stuff has happened in those games. Let's finish it up, Eric. Raiders, go ahead.
Real quick, I'm sorry. If you look at the last 37 games, which is so this season plus the last 3, if you mentioned them blowing leads, Harbaugh is 69% ATS. So basically the last two years plus the 4 games for this year, if you take out that and just look at Harbaugh overall, 59% ATS. So if you worry about them blowing the lead, play the Ravens first half because he does cover.
Okay, let's get to Monday Night Football, Raiders, Chiefs. This was the other game where you were on the right spot on the Raiders and the Cardinals last week. Both of them, in watching their games, just like we were talking about with like the Colts, I would have loved to play against them this week because I thought they had great spots last week. They took advantage of those spots now looking back, and I would have loved to play against them, but I don't know if it's a good spot here because, yeah, I mean, I think the Chiefs are the better team, but I don't know if I want to lay more than a touchdown with Kansas City. They're 7. At 7 or under, I'd still lean Kansas City. I'm watching the Raiders last week, and I'm not all that impressed with them. I was more, disgusted with Denver. The offensive line did play a lot better for the Raiders, but better than what they were playing because they were bad. Every member that saw significant snaps still gave up at least a pressure. Run blocking didn't grade out well, but they pushed for Jacobs. He had 28 carries on 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. And there's something weird about Jacobs just against the Broncos. It's the 3rd time in his career he's run for 100-plus yards against them, and the only team he has multiple 100-yard rushing games against. Adams had 9 catches on 13 targets for 101 yards. A lot of short stuff for him. Carr actually, I think what was key to this game, he picked up the ball and ran a few times. 3 first downs. He had 5 carries for 42 yards rushing. And they need to get a pass rush from someone other than Crosby. He has 4 of their 5 sacks this year. Haven't been getting a whole lot from Jones. On the Chiefs side, I mean, they looked pretty nice last week. They looked like they had a chip on their shoulder. That was sort of their big game. So this feels like maybe a flatter spot if it wasn't a divisional game. And I think that the Raiders kind of had their spot last week too. That's my concern about them maybe being a little flat here. Chiefs got sacked 3 times last week, threw an interception. They were pressured on 22.5% of dropbacks, 9 pressures on 40 dropbacks. But they scored 41 points. They held the ball for over 38 minutes. They only punted once. They only allowed 3 yards rushing. but they did give up 6.4 yards per play in a game where they only had 5.4 yards per play. So like in DVOA and stuff, that game doesn't grade out all that well. They allowed Tampa to go 3 for 3 in the red zone with touchdowns. The Chiefs did go 12 for 17 on third down conversions. Kelsey had 8 first downs, which was tied for the third highest mark in the history of him and Mahomes together. 7 of them came when he was in the slot or out wide. Pacheco got a little more involved. He had 3.9 yards after contact and a couple broken tackles. That little flip that Mahomes hit, that was awesome, man. That little basketball play, that looked like he was doing like a little turnaround jumper, the little floater flip. They scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions. They scored more points in the first half than any team had scored against Tampa all year. But as I talked about earlier, like you kind of dig into Tampa's defense, there were some cracks there. Now, they had 4 different players score a touchdown. They had 5 different players run the ball, and they had 8 different receivers catch a pass. They were kind of showing off and seemed like they really wanted to get their revenge against Tampa. Mahomes was 18 for 28 for 221 yards and 2 touchdowns and an interception versus 4 or fewer pass rushers. Against Tampa in the Super Bowl, he had a 64.7 passer rating against 4 or fewer. In this game, he had a 97.5. He became the fastest quarterback ever to throw for 20,000 yards in his career, and a negative for them. They've only created 4 turnovers this year. Only 4 teams have forced fewer turnovers this year, and all of them have losing records. Now, they're okay in that all 4 turnovers they've created, they've scored touchdowns on those. So at least they're doing the best with what they're making. Talk to us about Monday Night Football, Eric.
Again, no props out, so it's kind of tough to know what to do. I said this last week. Chiefs are bad defending the running back, especially in receptions and receiving yards. The prop for Fournette was 4.5. That was a little too much for me, so I didn't want to get involved in that. But his receiving yard prop was only 24.5. Hit the first play of the game that the Bucs had the ball. He had 25-yard reception. So Josh Jacobs receiving yards, I'd be interested in that. Again, it's kind of tough because there's no real props out. If it's in that 20, 25 range, I'm definitely going to be involved. In terms of sides, this is a divisional game. No, I hate taking
big
numbers.
I
hate laying points like this. But if you just look at the last 4 games, like the over-under right now, it's a high 51. But if you just look at the last 4, 57 points, 55 points, 66 points, 72 points. A lot of points scored in these games. If I were to take anything sidewise, I would take the over. I'm looking at
both of these teams are coming off of games where they played opponents that's their offenses aren't playing well right now.
Yeah.
Like Tampa is 15th in offensive DVOA. You know, you think about Tampa as being a better offensive team, and then you have Denver, and they're 24th in offensive DVOA, and both of those teams are not offensive juggernauts. Both of these teams are just a little bit better overall as far as being more prolific offensively. I mean, Kansas City, obviously, they're a top 5 offense in DVOA. So I agree with you. I would lean over if I had to play in this game.
And I'm Josh Jacobs rushing props. That's receiving props. That's my only thing here. I haven't even looked at the weather at Kansas City yet. I was hoping this was gonna kind of dip down a little bit, that some money would come in on the under drifted down, but I'm fine where it is right now. I play the over and some Josh Jacob props.
So Eric, thanks, man. You helped out quite a bit this week, making an adjustment. We're recording late on Wednesday night, so it's late into the night for you. A couple DFS plays that I mentioned throughout: Robinson, Lazard, Thielen, Eagles wide receivers against a bad Arizona secondary. So Smith, Brown, if you want to get a few of them. And then, because Baker was just missing guys last week. And then Robert Woods. I think he may be a little bit interesting to use in some spots. Sounds like you and
Westbrook Hines.
Yeah.
One of those 2 guys.
Sounds like some games that you and I both were leaning on the same side.
So what did we do in the contest last week?
3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 3-2.
That's in the money, dude.
Every week.
Every week.
Every week.
Three
So yeah. So here we are again. Colts plus 3.5. Dolphins -3 sounded like games we'd both be okay with.
I mean, I hate doing that.
But Colts plus 3.5 for sure. Let's go for sures, and we'll come back to that game if we need something else. Texans, you want to go +7?
Let's go Texans +7.
Okay, so Texans +7, Colts plus 3.5. Those are two for